So this is a leadership lesson. When you think about different people have different styles of leadership. And so some people style of leadership is management, and some people's style of leadership is just leadership. And management style leadership versus leadership style leadership, neither one of them is right or wrong. It's just really about like what's your preferred style. But when you know your preferred style of leadership, then you also have to think about how that impacts the people that you're leading, because they also have a preferred style of leadership. Some people like to be managed, some people like to be led. People that like to be managed, you never hear really complain about micromanagement or too much information, or you never hear them feel any way about transcribing and tasks, because they need tasks in order to complete an assignment. People that like to be led, they hate to be managed because they feel like they take it personal. You don't trust me, da 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 da. Usually those are people that done the work in terms of the type of leader they are, so they pride themselves in getting an assignment and fulfilling that assignment. So it's kind of complicated when you are in leadership. Now, because it's not just mastering your style of leadership, it's also understanding how people want to be led. Right. So now that's a whole nother layer for another conversation at another day, like trying to discover who are you leading and how do they need to be led. Which is a study, because great leaders study like themselves and they study other people. But in the process of being a leader, and I dare say a woman in leadership even, it's a natural tendency most of the time for a woman to be a nurturer of an idea, a helper of the idea. It's just like who she is in most cases. That's not to be like all women or all men, because right, you have variations. But in certain women, when they have that nurturing style of leadership, although they have strong leadership, they tend to more be managers. Now, being a manager and a woman as a leader, depending on who you leading, can then create a whole nother set of situations. Right. Because if the person you're leading or managing is a man that don't want to be told what to do or managed by a woman, now you got to deal with stuff that ain't even your stuff, because it's like their perspective of how women communicate and lead and all of this other dynamic. So like, what do you do with all of these variations, right? So I'm just saying, in presenting those styles or understanding those styles of management style leadership versus leadership style leadership, that is just something to like be aware of and to think about. But that's a whole nother, we're gonna have to dig into that some more. In whatever style of leadership that you have, it's important that you delegate, right? So delegation is like a key to leadership, because when you have a team of people that you lead, then it's important that you delegate or give stuff away. This can be hard because it's about trust, and it's about like if the people gonna finish and if they're gonna do what you like ask them to do, and depending on if you got a culture of trust or a culture of suspicion, determine how much you give away or how much you try to control or how much you try to do by yourself. But you're not leading if you don't have a team. Like, you're just by yourself. So if you can't call yourself a leader if there's no team. If there's no one helping you, you're not a leader. If there's nobody that you can give it away to, then you're not leading. So when you are leading and you are delegating, then it's about giving away stuff that you don't necessarily have to do or need to do in order for the overall overarching project or idea to be successful. Everybody can have a great idea, but few people have great implementation. So the difference between the great people and the good people is implementation over ideas, because everybody have ideas. So now in leadership, when you get an idea or a great idea has been given to you, your greatest thing is I want to implement this flawlessly. So the temptation is to control it, because you now are like, if it don't get implemented flawlessly, that's a reflection on my leadership. And forget that, so I'm gonna control all the dynamics so it can get executed in implementation, because I don't want the idea to die.
Right.
But if you only are the only one touching the idea, then you're not leading. So now, how do we delegate? So these are like 3 or 4 simple things that I learned over time when it comes to delegating, just a couple leadership lessons that I want to talk about as relates to that. So an axiom I always use is initiate before you delegate. So you know that. Initiate before you delegate. So that is, before I give it away, I want to initiate it. I want to make sure that the paradigm, the perspective, the project that we're taking, that the vision is clear. I want to engage it before, so we can explore it together, so I didn't just give it away prematurely and then frustrated when I have to fix it when it didn't get done right. So how do I initiate before I delegate? It's through communication. So I communicate before I delegate. So when I'm communicating before I delegate, there's all types of communication: face-to-face, phone calls, meetings, text messages, emails, voice memos, videos, whatever, right? So communicating before I delegate is so that I can clarify all clear expectations and answer any questions up front. I want to clarify all my expectations and answer any questions that could come at that moment up front. So when you first give it to people, they don't have questions. So they're gonna say, "Oh, you got any questions?" No. "All mine's clear?" No. Then they walk away and have a million questions. So it's like having those encounters where you are communicating and you're asking for people to have any clarifying questions and they have no questions. Ask them to tell you what you just heard back. So you know, because communication isn't just like what I say to you. Communication is also, did you hear me, and can you say it back to me? And so it's like, when you ask for clarifying questions, people say, "No, I don't have any questions." Ask them to repeat back, send back, not just, "I got it, I read it, I saw it, I heard it. What did I say?" Okay. Right? Because if you do that first, then a lot of the challenges, no problems. We don't have problems, we have challenges. All the challenges up front can begin to help us to make sure that we have clarity. All right? So when we do that, then I like it in person, or I like it in a conversation or some kind of face-to-face situation. I don't like written words first when it comes to communication, because it's subject to interpretation. The mood that the person was in, how they read it, what they was doing while they were reading it. So if you can't have a meeting, a video, a voice, a call, phone call, something, and I know phone calls just feel like they take so much time and they're antiquated nowadays for most generations. They're too busy. But a phone call, a group call, a FaceTime, a Zoom, a Skype, something that lets us look at each other. So if we can't get together in the same room, we can see each other. So tones, inflections, understanding can all take place, right? So then after I communicated face to face or some type of visual aid or voice aid, then we follow up in writing. So when we follow up in writing, we're only really expressing what we already said, or what we already heard, or what we already talked about. So it's like, here's what we talked about per our conversation, per our meeting, blah, 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 minutes to the agenda, right? That helps people to reinforce and see it differently. Think about it, get back to me. And so we just want these layers of communication. So we certain, you know that. All right. Next thing in delegation, the third thing you do is you check on what you communicated to be sure that the people you gave it away to feel supported. So don't check on so much on what you delegated, because then they'll feel babysat if you're trying to lead instead of manage. Right. So if you're in a process where you're trying to lead instead of manage, then you don't want to give it away and then come back and check on what you gave away, because they're going to feel like, well, just do it. Some people will. Some people feel great. But people always want to feel that you're supporting them for what you told them to do. So I'm just checking on you to see if you good. Did you get my email? We straight? Is there any barriers I can move? Anything I can help you understand? Anything that came up after our conversation? You know what I'm saying? I want you to have to figure it out. So you check on them. Check with who you communicated to to make sure that they feel supported. And that can be, however, a text message, a call, email, whatever their preferred is. That'll just give you another layer, right? The last thing that you do is you celebrate after. So that third thing, you do just right before it's time to launch it, to do it, to execute it. Yo, I'm just checking, final, make sure y'all good, blah, blah, blah. Then the last thing you do is after it's done, you celebrate what you delegated. So make sure that if somebody accomplished a task and they did it, you just go back, you circle back, and you just celebrate them for what they did and how they accomplished it. And I say, not only personally or individually, sometimes in the group, so that whatever is celebrated gets repeated. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, celebrate, yo, you were good, how you did that when the task completed, because it builds morale among the team, and it builds consistency and continuity in you as a leader, so that people feel like, oh, if they asked me to do something, this is pretty much the process. And you build that routine into what you're doing. Now, time frames, it matters depending on how big or little or how small what it is that you're trying to accomplish is. You got to measure that. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, but this is like a route of delegation. So all leadership is accomplished in layers, right? So all leadership is accomplished in layers, and building a strong team and building trust with your team helps you succeed all the time. And so it's not just knowing your style of leadership, it's also knowing the style that people lead, and knowing which thing is most, matters most for which situation. And when you do that, that helps you to accomplish a task with a greater impact. And that's ultimately the goal. So, yeah.